Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Shattered, a Logan McKenna novel by Valerie Davisson, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Prologue. The last time she'd seen a dead body, it was Jack's, and it had lain neatly resting in a long, cool coffin, peaceful, far removed from the sights and sounds of death. Not this one. Someone had angrily stuffed this one into a white cinder block box, a space much too small for it, like a bundle of human garbage. Neck broken, legs bent like a spider's, jeans drenched in blood, and an almost unrecognizable bloated purple-veined face. But she did recognize it, and it belonged to someone much too young to die. Chapter 1. An evening early in May. Traces of smoke from distant beach bonfires mingled with the juxtaposed scents of eucalyptus and jasmine filled the night. A woodsy aroma rose from the fresh layer of bark chips the groundskeepers had put down earlier in the day. If Southern California had a signature scent, this was it. Seated on a stool at his workbench in the back, Thomas contemplated his next move. The storage unit he worked in was just an old tent from which they kept the front booth stocked. Canvas walls stretched back about 10 feet, supported by a crisscross network of sturdy metal poles. A side flap opened to a warm canyon breeze. On the rough surface in front of him lay a thin piece of obsidian, measuring a little more than 6 inches long. It had been carefully knapped, sloping down to a fine edge on either side. The resulting ultra-sharp blade could easily slice through the bones of the hands that made it. 4 completed knives lay to his right. A battery-powered work lamp illuminated the area directly in front of him on the table, providing enough light by which to work. On a narrow shelf just above the obsidian blade lay several curved pieces of antlers ready to be made into knife handles. Elk, not deer. Customers probably wouldn't know the difference if he used deer antler, but he would. The German collector, on the other hand, knew his stuff. He'd insisted on elk. Thomas considered each piece. Just as he started to reach for one, his cell phone rang. Placing his materials down on the table, he wiped his hands on his jeans, reached in his pocket, pulled out the phone, and answered. "Hello, everything okay?" Thomas lowered his voice even though no one else was around. "Did you get the money?" he asked. "Good. Are you sure we can handle this?" he added. "Okay, I just want this to be over." Thomas ended the call and slid the phone back in his pocket. Satisfied there was nothing more he could do for now, he refocused on his work. Looking over the antler pieces one more time, he reached up and selected one, hefted it briefly, and placed it on the table. Holding the long obsidian blade carefully in the other hand, he held it against one end and then the other of the future handle, trying to decide which angle worked best. He loved working at night. No interruptions or customers asking questions. The quiet was deep, but something made him stop, sit up, and listen. Pinpricks ran up his spine. He rubbed the back of his neck and shook it off. Probably nothing. Still. Turning slowly, he looked over his left shoulder. He was not alone. One of the young glass blowers, Elizabeth, leaned coolly against the metal post in the doorway, formed by the open flap, arms folded. Not a hair out of place, her thin ponytail cut a perfect white blonde scythe out of the soft night sky. Oozing confidence, her face looked deceptively delicate in the residual light from the lamp. It also looked smug. You only had to meet Elizabeth once to know she was trouble. Keeping a tight lid on his mouth and his emotions, Thomas wondered how much she had heard. "Sounds very hush-hush, Thomas. Keeping secrets from the wife? Gambling? Get someone pregnant?" Elizabeth fished, her blue eyes glittering like tiny chunks of Arctic ice. Thomas decided to wait her out. When he neither denied nor confirmed, she continued, strolling into the tent. "What's the money for? Let me guess. An abortion? Something worse?" Thomas crossed his arms and leaned back on the counter, quickly calculating the damage and what he could do about it, careful not to let his face betray his mounting concern. Whichever way this went down, he would protect Lisa. Of that one thing he was very sure. Elizabeth paused, looked down at her feet, and straightened her shoulders. With something bordering on an apology, she looked directly into his eyes. "This isn't personal, Thomas. I didn't plan to overhear your conversation tonight, but I've learned to take luck where I find it. So I don't know who you pay to do what, but as long as you're writing checks, you can send some my way. $8,000 ought to do it." She waited to see if this amount would fly. Thomas didn't object, so she continued. "I need airfare for the competition, and I'm short some to set up my own studio. When I get back, whether I win or not, I'm going solo. I'm tired of dealing with troglodytes like Matt." She almost spit out the name. Elizabeth squinted at him, waiting to determine the efficacy of her threat. Thomas wasn't sure what she was capable of, but she looked dead serious. He'd only met her once before when he was out visiting Howard at his compound where he and his interns lived, and Howard gave classes. She'd half-heartedly hit on him. He'd politely but firmly made it clear he was married and that had been the end of it. In fact, he thought she was seeing Matt, one of the other glassblowers, but after what she'd just said, that didn't seem likely. He hoped she wasn't the type to hold a grudge. Apparently that had nothing to do with it, because she didn't act like a woman scorned, just on a mission, and after overhearing his conversation, an opportunity to fulfill it, with his money. Thomas had about $20,000 in the bank. He'd just gotten a large order from his German collector. That's why he was working so hard now. He had to replace his inventory before the festival. Luckily, Elizabeth didn't know this, or she'd have asked for more. $10,000 was already going to the man on the phone, so $8,000 was doable. Adopting Elizabeth's pragmatic attitude, he went to the bank in the morning and withdrew that amount. It was from his business account, which Lisa never checked. Until recently, it wouldn't have been worth it if she did, as the balance rarely rose above $150. If she ever discovered the missing money, he would just have to explain what it was for. Money meant nothing. He'd do anything to protect his wife. Chapter 2. Logan tossed the letter back on her desk. She definitely landed in the city of Oz and was in dire need of a pair of ruby slippers. Not for the first time this year, she wondered why anyone would work in the public school system unless they had a lobotomy or were working off jail time. It all started last October when, as a favor to her friend Bonnie, she'd taken a long-term sub-job for the 7th grade teacher at Roosevelt Middle School in Tilcott, California. She'd spent the last 2 years since her husband Jack died wrapping up and selling the computer business they'd built together. The process had been wrenching. After paying off business debts, Jack had been more charmer than money manager. There wasn't a whole lot left. Truth be told, she needed the job. Tilcott was a small community, about 20 minutes up the coast from the even smaller town of Jasper, where she and Bonnie had grown up. Top scores on the entry exam and a double major in math and music qualified her for an emergency teaching credential. If she decided to continue, she'd have to enter the internship program next year. They had one that started in June, completing her coursework in the summer. She quickly discovered that things had changed since she, or even her daughter Amy, had been in school. The focus on test scores had left students burned out, teachers exhausted, and parents frustrated. Music and art programs had been eliminated in order to hire test prep coaches. They would have eliminated PE too, but a few enlightened state legislatures had managed to mandate a minimum of 40 minutes a week. Of course, few districts enforced this requirement. Any subject not specifically tested was given short shrift, so science and history were pretty much ignored in favor of hours of back-to-basics reading and math lessons, keeping students chained to their desks for hours. Who did they think was going to make the new discoveries for clean energy and find the cure for cancer? Someone who'd never done a science experiment? Lucky for her students, Logan chose to ignore all that nonsense. She took her students out for PE every day. Her first day of school speech went something like this. "Here's the deal. I don't give stickers for breathing. I will never lie to you. I can help you learn to write anything from a business plan to a Dear John letter, but I won't write it for you. In 5 short years, you'll be running this planet, so I expect you to know something about it before June. I'll give you the tools and skills you'll give yourselves the world. First assignment of the year, teach me something tomorrow that I don't know. Any questions? 36 pairs of wide eyes stared back at her. No alphabet necklace in sight and none of her jewelry lit up. She was definitely different, but could she be trusted? By the end of the first month, everyone knew the tall new teacher with the long wavy hair said what she meant and meant what she said. Sun glinting off her auburn locks, her trademark boot and jean stride was easily spotted from across campus, usually accompanied by one or more students. By January, when her down-to-earth teaching style started producing results, requests to be in her class started piling up in the office. Not only were her students among the few with smiles on their faces Monday morning and books under their arms on Friday afternoons, but most of them outperformed other students on the mid-year math and reading tests. That was the beginning of the trouble. Sheila Morrell, an 8th grade teacher at the high school and one of Principal Meterson's favorites, said nothing but rolled her eyes and sighed audibly in the staff meeting when the results were announced. Not satisfied with gossip and innuendo, Sheila had gone to Matterson and convinced him to write this pack of lies letter on Logan's desk, accusing her of helping her students cheat on the tests in order to win. Win what? Logan had vented to Bonnie on the phone at break that morning. What exactly do I win? What is wrong with that woman? Too much to mention, Bonnie said. And I'd actually considered taking this damn job, Logan fumed. She wasn't sure she'd take it now if they handed it to her on a silver platter. Fly low, okay? Bonnie said. You have until August, right? You don't have to make any decisions until then. Yeah, I guess. Just because they're accusing you doesn't mean the board will believe them. But hope was dim at best. She knew no one on the school board and had done nothing to ingratiate herself with anyone at district. Why should they fight for her? She was well aware that all 5 feet 8 inches of her was really lousy at office politics. Working for herself, she just hadn't had to deal with it in a long time. Stuffing the letter into her purse, she focused on the task at hand. Clear green eyes scanned the end of the year checklist given to everyone by the school secretary. Computers covered and stored? Check. Bulletin boards stripped? Check. Textbook inventory complete? Check, check, check. Lesson plans made for the first week back. If there's going to be a first week back, she muttered. Later she would process the year, but right now the only thing she wanted to process was an ice-cold margarita at Juan's. If she left now, she might beat traffic and fit in a beach run before dinner. Look on the bright side, Logan told herself as she locked her door for the summer and maybe for good. You have 76 white squares on your calendar. You're a free woman until September. She was looking forward to a relaxing, uneventful summer.